Okay, and we are live on YouTube.
Great. Well, welcome to the November 16th public hearing and public meeting of the Landmarks Preservation Commission. We'll begin the day by taking attendance. Mark, will you take the attendance?
Chair Carroll.
Here.
Vice Chair Bland.
Here.
Commissioner Shamir Barron is not here yet. Commissioner Chapin.
Here.
Commissioner Chen is also not here yet. Commissioner Goldblum.
Here.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Here.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Here.
That's the roll.
Okay.
Commissioner, oh wait, hello,
Hello.
Oh,
I'm here.
sorry, Jeannie. I thought you were supposed to be absent. Commissioner Lutfi.
Here next week.
Great.
All right, great. And Commissioner Holford Smith is not here yet.
Correct.
Okay. So welcome again to the November 16th public hearing and public meeting. We will begin today with our public hearing agenda. We'll take a break in the middle to do a public meeting item and then return to our public hearing items. This meeting is being held via Zoom and live streamed on our YouTube channel. So if you would like to testify on any of the hearing items, please join the meeting at the estimated time as shown on our agenda. And if you would like to just watch the proceedings, you may do so on our YouTube channel. And I will now turn it over to Corey Harala, our Director of Preservation, to take us through our agendas today.
Hey, thanks, Sarah, and good morning, everyone. And as mentioned, we have a slight schedule shift. We'll start with public hearing items 1 and 2, and then move back to public meeting item 1, and then resume the public hearing item agendas from there. So to start, public hearing item number 1, LPC 21-08857, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Queens, Block 8044, Lot 5, 15 Shore Road in the Douglaston Historic District. A colonial revival style house designed by George Hardway and built in 1910. And the application is to enlarge an extension, construct a porch and patio, modify the entrance, install a skylight, relocate a driveway and curb cut, and excavate and regrade portions of the site to access a new below grade garage.
Hey, Commissioners, the applicants have entered the hearing. You now have control of the screen. Please state your name for the record and you may begin. Oh, Kevin, please be sure to unmute yourself. Kevin, you need to unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Okay.
Morning, Commissioners.
So Kevin, I'm gonna roll back the presentation. When I give you control, please don't hit escape because you'll reduce it for everyone. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Just click on your screen and then you can advance using the arrow keys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning, Commissioners. Kevin Wolf here, architect for 15 Shore Road. The house is located on the west side of the district, facing Little Neck Bay. It's the only house on Shore Road that has its own waterfront access. All the others are separated by Shore Road. The red is the location. It's an oddly shaped lot. This is Shore Road along here. It comes to a severe point. This is marshland and Little Neck Bay beyond. And this is the footprint of the house. Oops. So the 1940 tax photo, you get an idea of what the house was originally. It's mostly intact. This is the porch, a screen porch, which today is enclosed. This was enclosed in the 1950s by the then owner, who was a partner at SOM. It has a cantilevered deck over a driveway. There's no garage. The front door was originally recessed and that front door remains in place, but this has since been glassed over. You'll be able to see it in a later photo. And Today, there is a skylight over here that the previous architect installed, and that wasn't there originally. So the project consists of several components. Here you can see the original house. This is the outline of the cantilever deck. The new program includes rebuilding at a slightly larger footprint that same sun porch, locating a garage below it, access from Shore Road. And then the new deck is on columns, classical styled columns. There's a small service deck over here off of the kitchen, which I'll show you in the next slide. So this is the first floor plan, the rebuilt sun porch, the new deck rooted to the ground, and the service deck over here. The front entry will get enclosed with a permanent glass enclosure and a new front door. On the second floor, excuse me, the major change is that the master bedroom gets a deck over the sun porch, where today it's a hipped roof with the deck below. There's no major work on the third floor, except in the existing plan here, the skylight, and we'd be adding a twin to that skylight over here. Michael Arad, the current owner, is an architect, and his goal with this project was to recapture the original character of the 1910 shingle style house. So here you can see these are aluminum storm panels that enclose the front door now. And this is the porch with these enormous sliding glass panels, the cantilever deck. And this is a photo of that. The skylight up here, this is an interior view. It brings quite beautiful light into the third floor. And this is a close-up of the aluminum and glass enclosure. The front door is behind it. And this is the front door once you get into the vestibule, which has been altered over time with, I guess, lock problems. So in the new scheme, we'd be adding a skylight here, replacing the skylight so that they are the same. The front door would get enclosed, the vestibule would get enclosed with a new front door, transom and skylights flush with the front of the house. Small service deck here, new garage underneath the rebuilt sun porch here, deck above, and then this is the new deck off the first floor with Tuscan columns. The precedent, the precedent for the flush front door is a duplicate house that's exactly a block away from 15 Shore. And here you can see that in this house, it has similar transom and side lights at the front door flush with the front of the building. This house was built at the same time. And here's a rendering of that. You can see this replaced with a solid front door, transom and side lights, the new sun porch with traditional muntins, the deck with traditional detailing for the railings over here. And this is the second floor deck above. There's another view where you will be able to see the second skylight that's been added. So this is the west elevation looking at Little Neck Bay. There's a fully exposed cellar level in the back with a huge picture window that was done in the 50s at the same time. And so we'll be replacing that with French doors, which you'll see in a moment. The base of the building is all stone, 2 feet thick. And this is a photograph of that same shot showing the cantilever deck that wraps around and overhangs both on the west side and the south side of the original structure below at basement level. Here's some details of that deck. It had this nautical theme, very open, and stepped down from the sun porch. And here's the view out toward the bay. Oops. And you can see now that from Shore Road, this is Shore Road here, There's an asphalt driveway that just dies right under the cantilever deck. This tarp in the background is an existing swimming pool that would get redone as part of this project. So the new garage will be located in this space, and you'll see in a later series of drawings and rendering how the new driveway works. So this is that west elevation, divided lights, the French doors where that big picture window was. And this is the wall of the driveway that extends the use of the stone. That's part of the base of the building now. Traditional detailing at the railing and Tuscan columns which show up throughout the neighborhood in gambrel roofed houses like this. This house is directly behind, south of 15 Shore Road. And this is just to show you that they have a similar situation with the grade dropping off dramatically as 15 Shore does, and have the same situation where they have a deck at the first floor level, Tuscan columns, and a porch below. This is a rendering from Shore Road. This is the deck, and here you see this rebuilt with the new driveway and garage below. At the south elevation, you can see the porch, the cantilever deck, and this portico over an entry to a partially finished cellar floor. And this is what that looks like. The tarp is over a very narrow swimming pool. And I have a later picture that shows that opened up. It's very tight tolerances to get around that swimming pool. So part of the scheme at the south elevation is to remove this portico. This is a safety fence required for having the pool in the back here, which we'll show you in a later slide. And this is a view 1 block south on Alston Place looking at our project. This is the east elevation of 15 Shore. And this is the south elevation that I just showed you. This is a winter view. In the summer months, it's much more obscured by all the trees and vegetation. But this is as much of the house as you can see. There's a huge evergreen planting of the owner here that obscures most of 15 Shore. This is the existing east elevation. There's a service door here with a small portico. And these are the remnants of collapsing stone walls, concrete retaining walls. This is that little portico. It's quite overgrown. And this is the service deck I mentioned that goes out toward Shore Road. There's traditional lattice work as the slope goes down. The details are here. And that little portico gets moved and centered over the door on this side. This is the view from Shore Road. This is the front of the house, the north elevation. This is the east side that I just showed you. That new deck will go here. There's a door to the kitchen that will be here as part of the renovation. And this is that view with a rendering of the same view showing the front door. This is where the deck is. And this black fence is the safety fence that'll actually be planted out. It's shown here so you can get to see what the material is. And that's shown also in the landscape architect's plans that I will show you in a moment. So Shore Road here. This is the new layout of the driveway. So it takes this kind of sharp angle driveway and orchestrates it a little more gracefully to get into the garage at the cellar level. And here you can see the landscape architect has pulled some of the stonework from this existing stone wall to make a lower lawn. There's new paving around the existing pool. It's a long, narrow pool. And this is air conditioning units over here, that small service deck, and the entry to the cellar at this level. This is a new block wall that I will show you a detail of. The other walls that exist here, stone that I'll show you in a moment, will be repaired or restored. Some of them are collapsing. Here's a view of what the yard looks like now. You can see it's in fairly desperate condition after quite a few years of neglect. This is the portico that gets removed to make easier access along the pool. It's 4 to 5 feet tops along the side of the house to get past the pool. And the portico gives you about 2 feet to get past the pool, or you just leap in when you come out the door. And here you can see the tightness. So this would be removed to give greater access along the side of the pool. This is the view with the pool cover removed, the bay beyond, and the pool cover on. This is the current safety fencing, which is in bad shape, the stockade fence. So the new fencing will be see-through to comply with code. It's a picket style fence. And this is looking in the opposite direction. Again, you can see how tight the access is along the edge of the pool. Here's a blow up of the landscape architect's plan, Liz Farrell, and you can see the paving, the portico removed to give greater access, the new driveway coming down, a lower lawn, and reconstruction of some of these features, a stone staircase here. This is the view from the east side. This is the current pool fence, which is just a stockade fence. And these are some of the stone walls that would get reconstructed along here. This stone wall would get raised slightly along here to flatten out the lawn that's behind here that I showed you a moment ago. And this is a stone staircase that I'll show you a close-up of. So this would be rebuilt as needed. As you can see, it's in tough shape. These are details from the landscape architect's work. She's using this very simple black metal fence. The idea is that just this disappears in the landscape. At key points, it'll be planted out so that it'll be even less visible. For the new wall, she's using this stone block system, and this fence will actually go in front of that and be planted out, making it less visible. And some of the staircase features she's showing that will get reconstructed. Very simple lighting with these bronze hats. And this is the detail of that new wall with the fence in front of it and vegetation. The pool is up here. So the idea is to completely screen this out as the shrubs grow in. So new wall here, reconstructed fence here, the stone wall reconstructed and pulled up here to make a lawn, new driveway connecting into the new garage below the porch, air conditioner units, service deck, little path to that side door, and new paving around the pool. Oops, sorry about that. So this is the final slide. Sorry, keeps moving. The final slide, and here's, it seems to have a mind of its own, I apologize. So you can see the front door here, skylight, the edge of the service deck, this deck, classical Tuscan columns below. This is some of the safety pool fencing along the edge of the porch on the lower level, and this graceful driveway that takes you down to the new garage, which is here. And that's it.
Great, thank you very much. We
Thank
do
you.
have at least one question. Commissioner Goldblum, go ahead.
Thanks. On the detail sheet for the landscape architect, there showed an instance where that block wall was not screened. Where did that occur?
Let me go back. So the screening of the block wall is only on this edge, the new wall. And
Okay,
that's the only spot that occurs. And the fence would be on this lower level. The way the code works, which some of you may know, is that the fence has to be 4 feet high from the outside in. So Liz has arranged it so the fence is below here. So if you're on the pool deck, you're actually looking completely over the fence with an unobstructed view. It works out nicely that way.
and the roof, the roof over your terrace, that's an asphalt roof?
The roof,
That little fringe of roof around your patio? Go back to
I'm not
the-
sure where you mean. I'm sorry.
Sorry, go back to the rendering.
Okay. This?
Yeah,
Yeah, the new roof is an asphalt shingle roof, correct?
and that matches the existing house, which is also asphalt shingle?
Yes, so the roof on the existing house, all of this will be replaced in this phase of the project, and this new roof will be the same asphalt material.
And
the
do we have
current-
any evidence as to what it was originally?
Yes, most of the houses in Douglas Manor in the historic district originally had wood cedar shingle roofs, and this one did as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions? All right, I don't see any questions just at this time, so we'll move to public testimony. If you're in the meeting and would like to speak on this item, please raise your virtual hand so we can identify you. And as always, we'll start with anyone who signed up in advance and then get to others. And I will turn it over to Lisa Kersavage to take us through the testimony. Lisa, are you doing it today?
It's actually Sasha.
Sasha, okay, I'm going to turn it over to
Thank you.
Sasha Seeley.
Yes, but I need the power to let folks in. I'm not a co-host.
Oh.
Okay, I'm
Be
going to,
ready.
hello? Okay, I'm going to call on Mark Bench from Victorian Society. Mark, I am bringing you in, promoting you to panelist. Okay, Mark, you're in the meeting. You can go ahead and unmute your mic and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Sasha. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is Mark Bench for the Victorian Society in New York. Founded in New York City in 1966, the Victorian Society in America is dedicated to fostering the appreciation and preservation of our 19th and early 20th century heritage. The New York chapter promotes preservation of our historic districts, individual landmarks, interiors, and civic art. Victorian Society in New York supports the proposed addition with qualifications, but urges the Commission to find the front entrance alterations to be inappropriate. At first, we assume the existing side addition and deck were alterations of little value, but on closer examination, the addition is actually an historic porch that's been enclosed. It would be more appropriate to retain the framing of this original feature, especially its visible corner posts and trim, and add new infill as proposed. At the least, the post and trim details should be replicated to recall the original structure and relate to the relate better to the main house. The proposed deck and lower level alterations and infill seem appropriate stylistically and in material, as long as what appears to be original masonry at the lower level is retained. The landscape alterations seem appropriate in form and materials, though without a site visit, which we have been unable to make, we have no definitive recommendations. At the front entrance, we note that the designation report calls out the recessed entryway with panel door as a notable feature. This proposal appears to call for its demolition to be replaced by a sort of replica in the plane of the front wall, eliminating the recess with its charming flanked benches. The original door, sidelights, and wood trim appeared to be in excellent condition, having been protected from the weather. This historic fabric and the original recessed entry configuration should be retained. As a preservation matter, it would be better to leave the existing modern outer enclosure or replace it with something better, but retain the original recessed entrance intact. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to bring in next Historic District Council. Okay, I have promoted you to panelist. Kathy, you should be in the meeting. You can go ahead and unmute your mic and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, this is Kathy Brill speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC feels that the proposal is a well-designed modification of the existing structure and keeps with the existing vocabulary of the architectural style. In ways, the design also improves upon what currently exists. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. That is all the signups I have for today. Let me see. I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, great. And I'll note for the record that we received a resolution from Queens Community Board 11 recommending approval of the application, finding the changes will improve and enhance the landmark's aesthetic. And that we also received a letter from the Douglas Manor Association confirming the proposed work conforms to the DMA deed restrictions. Okay, Kevin, would you like to respond to the comments we've heard?
Sure. I would say a couple of things about Mark's comments. As to the porch, the sun porch, the work here basically replicates the original outline of the porch. The porch is bigger as you go south, that we added a couple of feet to the dimension of that so that we would be able to build a full-size garage below. And that was the driving force in expanding the footprint slightly of the sun porch. All of the detailing in here is traditional detailing based on other typical screen porches in Douglas Manor that were enclosed as the century wore on since they were built. As to the front door, our precedent for doing this is the house around the corner, 6 Arley Road, that has the side lights and transom. And the recessed doorway, despite it being recessed and weather protected, for some reason the front door as it exists is quite a bit of a mess. I'm always in favor of restoring doors like that if we can. This one, I'm not sure why, was not in good shape, even though it's protected from the weather. So in terms of leaving the storm panels there or replacing them with something more appropriate, one of the considerations that we went through, Michael Arad and I talked about this quite a bit, was you can't see the front door currently because of the glare from the storm panels. It's something that's there, but not very visible. It's somewhat visible from the street if you stop and really look. So we did not feel that it continued as a dominating feature of the original house because of those storm panels. So the decision was made to move the front door out to the plane of the building using 6 Arley as a precedent and designing something that was somewhat different than that house, but in the same spirit as 6 Arley. And that's how we got to this point.
Okay, thank you. We do
Sure.
have another question. Commissioner Jefferson, please go ahead.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, Commissioner Jefferson, did you have? Yeah, there you go.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
My question was answered earlier by the question was about the asphalt, and it was answered.
Okay. All right, commissioners, any other questions? All right, I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm going to send you all requests to unmute so we can make a motion to close the hearing. Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. And Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
I second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. And just to sort of give us a framework for our comments, there are several components. There is the new front door, the reconstruction, slightly larger, of the sun porch, including a garage below it and the deck on top, a new deck off of that, and the new entrance, and then the landscaping features. So Commissioner Bland, would you like to start this discussion?
I will, sure. Well, it's a very handsome house. I can see why in an earlier era, an architect bought it and lived there and made some changes to it. I presume well before it was a landmark district. And how another architect has now come aboard and wants to make more changes. I think, relatively speaking, I think these changes are a big improvement, which is an interesting comment just on the era. I'm sure that at the time the SOM partner made changes, presumably he, thought that that was the cat's meow of how to add on to this house, and how we've changed our attitudes currently. And think that this, I think generally speaking, is a very more appropriate way to add on to this very handsome early 20th century house. So specifically, I note also that the front door may be an issue for some. I think I'm persuaded that that this is an appropriate change. It is a change. It not only changes the location of the door, but the design of it somewhat. But I think it's based on photographs in the vicinity, and to me it seems appropriate, even though it's a bit different. And that the original door is not to be retained. I can imagine it at this location. Storms are part of the reason that the door needed to be enclosed in a different way than originally planned. The deck and the sunroom addition, I think adding a couple of feet to that is not a problem at all. I do think that it seems a little clumsy up on top. We're looking here at the deck off the master bedroom. I think working with staff, maybe they could change that a bit. I'm not sure exactly how, but it seems a bit clumsy. Maybe no change, and if it can't be changed, to let the balustrade run all the way around because of the slope of the roof. I think I could accept it, but maybe working with staff, they could figure out a slightly less clumsy way of looking at that. And I think the final thing I want to say, which is certainly not going to separate me from a vote to approve this as appropriate, would be my preference is always against that stone block wall, and with so much wonderful stone that they're using, I just urge this highly creative architect owner to think maybe of using real stone instead of the stone block. So I'll leave it at that. Otherwise, I'm very supportive of this and think it's a very handsome way to update this house.
Okay, great, thank you. Commissioner Lutfi?
Echo a lot of what Fred said. I also think this project is very well done, and I feel that the final product is very attractive and very contextual with what's around it. I feel as though the applicant did a good job at making sure that what was done here is in keeping with a lot of the architecture and the additions, et cetera, within within the area, within the district. So first, I think the porch with the sunroof is very, very well done. It's scaled well to the property. I also happen to feel that something kind of awkward about the way the railing fits into the roof and on top of this addition, and it would be good to work with staff to figure this out. I don't have a problem with the front door. I do feel that the applicant has made a good case for this this framing and this context based on what's here in the district, and it fits very well with the addition. I think the landscaping works well, and actually Fred's addition, I hadn't thought of it, but Fred's recommendation to use real stone is a good idea.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson.
Yes, I think a good building has turned into an elegant building by just adding 2 or 3 elements to it. I agree with the second floor porch, the handrail, the guardrail, it should turn the corner, and that should be restudied. I think the front door, although I think this is fine, should be restudied. The idea of moving the existing one forward might be good. And as a whole, the landscaping is well done. It's carefully thought through, an elegant addition.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gustafson.
Yeah, I think in many ways this is a model for adding space and replacing elements that weren't original and with new elements that serve the same purpose in a much more appropriate way. This image is just absolutely spectacular. Makes me want to live in this house. I agree with the issue with the second floor balcony there. I think it's what is striking, I think, is this sort of the railing interjecting itself into the slope of the roof line. That somehow or other that's got to be resolved differently. And I agree with Commissioner Jefferson. I think that I'm doing this on my own house at this very minute, taking off an existing door, moving it to a different location, and reinstalling it. And let me tell you, it's a money saver, but B, it's not that hard to do. And the original door, and I'm assuming they're not preserving any kind of internal foyer or mudroom or anything like that, so it's available to be moved. I think it should be moved up and reused.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chapin.
I think maybe we should get clarification, as I haven't looked at the plans again, but I thought they were actually preserving a sort of another foyer, if I'm not mistaken. But in general, I think that these changes are very sympathetic, appropriate, and much more in character with the district than the house was after the additions that had been formally made. I think that the porch, the enlargement of the porch is fine, that this porch is in general very typical of what you would see in the Douglaston district. I do agree with the comments of other commissioners that some work should happen with the staff on the railing and configuration of the upper porch, the roof of the porch and the deck there, because that looks a little awkward. And the skylights are fine. No one's talked about the skylights. I think the below grade garage and the landscaping are all very much in keeping with the district and well done. As to the door, I think because I think there are some other precedents in the district for changing from a recess to including the one the architect showed, but I think there may be others in the district of moving that entrance forward. So I would be okay with what's being done. And it wasn't clear to me if from the architect's remarks as to whether the condition of the door is such that it actually can be effectively and usefully restored. I think if they're not using real stone, it would be nice if the architect and the owner could look at that, but I wouldn't make that a reason not to approve it. So in general, with the exception of some work with the staff on that porch deck, I think that I could approve this as presented. And I also would support moving the door or moving, doing something different with the door to retain some of the original fabric if that is possible, feasible. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Goldblum.
Okay, thanks. Beautiful house. Great job as always from Mr. Wolf. Skylights are fine. I actually have no problem at all with the second floor balcony. I've seen that detail many times, and it's kind of how it's done in a lot of cases. But others want to change it. It'd certainly be fine to change it. I do think that the door should remain recessed a little bit. They are creating basically a new vestibule in the entrance hall with this moved front door and then a new arch on the interior. I think that you could probably slide that in. It doesn't have to be as deep as it was, but if you look at the historic tax photo, you see that the design of the first floor was very much characterized by this very deep recess, which I think is, it clearly was the intention of the architect to have this kind of very symmetrical, very plastic entrance. I think that should be recalled in some way. It doesn't need to be the full depth, but it should be something where you have a sense of shadow and depth on that front entrance. I really don't have any problem with the surround or the door. That's all secondary to me, to the fact of a recess of some depth. I'm fine with the porch. I'm fine with the garage. I'm fine with the sunroom and the skylights. I was curious about the use of that concrete block wall, but if, as Mr. Wolf says, it is completely covered by landscaping, then I'm okay with it. But there was a detail in his set that should be clarified with staff to make sure that that is not a condition that will be visible. In which case I would agree with Fred that it should be stone. My biggest gripe with this, and it wouldn't prevent me from calling it appropriate, but I would strongly urge the applicant to reconsider the asphalt shingles if it's being completely replaced. For a gambrel house where the roof is the facade, there are better options than an asphalt shingle roof, whether it's the faux slate or real slate or wood. I think a real material there is especially on this balcony where it's basically the skirt to the new addition. It's a very important aesthetic element to use. There is no asphalt shingle roof, none, that comes up to the quality of the other options, and they should strongly consider going for an alternate.
Okay, and we can suggest that. I would point out actually that our rules for Douglaston, I think, do allow for asphalt roofs where there's no historic material. But
yeah, no, I know that it's not required, but I mean, for gambrel roofs, especially where it's so much a part of the facade, I think it's worth making the effort.
Right. Well, and also I think with this porch overhang not being resolved, that may be a reason something to consider in redesigning that. Okay, so thank you for all of the comments. I think where we are is that we have a lot of support for this project. I think that it makes a lot of smart moves that are very contextual and very beautiful. And we have had some comments from commissioners about restudying the resolution of the railing and the roof on the porch, and some comments about restudying the door. And I think there's been different ideas discussed here, either keeping or pulling the door forward but slightly back, or keeping the existing door inside or on the outside. So I think what we'll do is we'll take no action and we'll ask the applicant to restudy those two components and also look at the stone material as well and come back to us as soon as they're ready. So thank you for your presentation. Thank you for the comments, commissioners, and the testimony from the public. And we'll see this back soon to just look at those two areas that should be restudied in response to our comments today. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Okay, we'll now move to public hearing item number 2, LPC 21-04247, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the borough of Staten Island, block 891, lot 99 and 93, 91 West Entry Road, Ernest Flagg's Toad Hill Cottages, Bocott individual landmark. An empty lot subdivided from the original lot occupied by a cottage designed by Ernest Flagg and built in 1918. The application is to construct a new house.
And I'm recused on this one.
Yes, thank you. So Commissioner Gustafson is recused and will be leaving the meeting for the duration of this application.
Hey, commissioners, the applicants have entered the hearing. You now have control of the screen. Just click on it and then advance the slides using your arrow keys. Please state your name for the record and you may begin.
I am the design architect, Tim Boyland. Good morning, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. Let me just see if I can control. Yep, there we go. Okay. There's a couple of second delay on there, it looks like, right? There we go. Okay, 91 West Entry Road. The design is a single-family detached residence with accessory structure informed by the vocabulary of architect Ernest Flagg, his original stone court residence, the adjoining residence Bocott, and other historic and contemporary precedent found in the surrounding Toad Hill neighborhood. The design is four-sided, meaning that every view of the exterior has been considered. The program emphasizes connectivity between interior and exterior spaces. A garden terrace is designed at the first floor level on the southeast side of the building with single bay garage below. Landscaping strategies are also informed by the work of Mr. Flagg. The team includes a licensed arborist landscape architect who has advised with site assessments, tree preservation, and planting strategies. 91 West Entry Road is designed in conformance with applicable zoning use, bulk, and setback regulations. The design strikes a balance between the architecture and contemporary codes and regulations. And our intent is to establish a cohesive development of the entire property to minimize likelihood of future modifications or additions. Here's an introduction into the architecture. We've been inspired by Mr. Flagg's own words. A building which seems fitted to its site has about it an air of belonging and holding a legitimate place in the landscape, which one designed to be placed anywhere cannot have. Bocott is an individual landmark. 1987 was a designation. It is close to, but not within, the designated Ernest Flagg estate property. In 2008, the owner of Bocott applied to subdivide the existing property and create a new building lot, approximately 10,000 square feet. The application was approved by LPC and DOB to create the new tax lot and for 91 West Entry Road. The zoning lot remained intact, no changes to the meets and bounds, and a new detached home is proposed for the new building lot, subject of this application. From the subdivision approval, the approval records the zoning characteristics of the existing residence and identifies the maximum threshold floor area, less than 50% for the zoning lot. No other conditions or stipulations are identified in the permit C and E. Looking at the zoning lot, 91 West Entry Road, we would refer to as Lot A, see it here. And the site plan is under Special Natural Area District review at Department of City Planning currently. The draft land use submittal is consistent with the site plan and data presented here. No variances or special permits are being requested. The buildable area on the tax lot is shown here. It approaches 5,000 square feet as a footprint. The historic context, certified to 1936 on the Sanborn. You see our 91 West Entry Road here alongside Bocott, which is 95. You see the original flag estate here, and the expanded LPC designation of the flag estate is here. This was the area subject of 1980s approvals for the Copper Flag Estates. Some of the landmarks you'll see here, Palm House, an original structure, the stable, swimming pool. Contemporary precedent is found at Walcott. This is Walcott, also flanking Flag Place, which is the location of a 2008 approval for a house known as 20 Iron Mine Drive. We're going to look at that. Current context, this is the designation area for the flag estate. These buildings, 7 in total, should be dark pink. They were all part of 1980s approvals, including the flag, 63 Flag Court, which was the Palm House. Here's our individual landmark, Bocott, and our proposed site. Here's Walcott and the 2008 construction of 20 Iron Mine Drive. Some historic precedent. These are photos of Flag's estate, Stone Court, and some contemporary photos. Pardon me a second. There we go. And this is the view from Flag Place. Contemporary precedent at Walcott. This is the original Walcott building here, flanking Flag Place. It has swimming pool, patio, driveways, other hardscape impervious surfaces. And this was 20 Iron Mine Drive, located here. Both homes have on-site septic systems, as there's no sanitary sewer fronting the site. And you can see this green line, which I refer to as a green wall. This is about a 15-foot high hedge row that gives the two homes privacy as they're located so close together. From the approved plan, found at the commission, you can see the two buildings are about 24 feet apart at the closest point. And you see the zoning analysis. Everything is in compliance with the required zoning in the R11 district. First floor of Walcott is 2660 square feet. That's also the lot coverage. That is the area when viewed directly above is building, occupied by building. Contemporary precedent photos. This is Flag Place. This is the original Walcott building here. There's been a lot of planting, which obscures the view of the original historic building. As you turn the corner onto Iron Mine Drive, you see here. Best view from Flag of the 20 Iron Mine Drive is this, and then a close-up here. Better view is from Iron Mine Drive, which is the front of the residence. And here it is here. This is a single-family residence, 2 stories plus cellar and attic. You can see that the largest element of the massing is closest to the street with this gabled section here. The height from the front yard line to the eave is about 20 feet. The height to the top of the ridge is about 30 feet. Materials, this is natural stone, cut stone. They used asphalt shingles for the roofing, and the approved plans call out the siding and trim as AZAC, which is a synthetic material. That's from the approved plan. The first and second floor combined area is just under 3,100 square feet, which is about 30.6% of the tax lot area. Other contemporary precedent from the 1980s is found in Copper Flag Estates. A private development company constructed a number of large homes on the former Flag Estate property. It included proposed designs reviewed and approved by the commission. Lot sizes are 10,000 square feet or larger. House designs are single family and are 2 stories plus attic and cellar. There are 2 floors of primary living space plus a built-in garage. According to New York City records, the primary living space at first and second floor in each of the new homes is between 4,000 and 5,000 square feet, typical for a single-family home in the R11 district. This includes the approved enlargement of the Palm House at 63 Flag Court. And here's our proposed home here in Bocott. The Office of Robert A.M. Stern developed a design manual to guide the architecture of the proposed homes. And we have included an unapproved copy of that design manual in our appendix, and we've been guided by it to a great extent in our designs. The approval could not be recovered from LPC records. Some photographs: contemporary 16 flag court, original flag buildings, including the water tower here. 16 flag court is a good reference for us. We have different roof lines. We have a one-story element with a pergola above that adjoins the driveway. The former stable is a unique building adaptively reused currently. Other buildings approved by the commission in the 80s, these houses along Flag Court, largest part of the massing here, closest to the street. Two-car garages are common on all of these. 51 through 71 flag includes these homes. 51. This is 63. This is the Palm House. That was the original building in the back, 1.5 stories. This was the addition to the Palm House. This 2+ story addition here, closest to the street, and 71 in a similar style. Other homes built by Copper Flag Corporation, although not reviewed by the commission. Adjacent house to us at 91 West Entry is number 85 West Entry Road. It's a pleasant house built in the 1950s. That is our neighbor to the north. And this is across the street, 15 West Entry Road. Neither of these are landmarked. Just giving you some idea about where the public view of Bocot and our home will be. Probably the primary view is here at the intersection of West Entry and Flag. Looking at those same view lines on top of our survey, Bocot straddling Flag Place here. So the site is very visible from this intersection here, and Bocot is unobstructed. The view of Bocot is unobstructed. Here's those photographs. So this is from Flag Place looking across the yard of Bocot. This is where the swimming pool is. You see the machinery for the swimming pool here. Looking down Flag to both directions. You see that Bocot has a 2-story element, a lower 2-story element closer to the street, which houses a single-car garage. This is our view up West Entry Road. And here's some recent improvements at Bocot basketball court and area here, which straddles the road on West Entry Road. Other photographs of the site. And we took one photograph from the Stone Court property, 209 Flag Court, just looking through the tree line. Our property's on the other side of that tree line here. So design inspiration most certainly comes from Flag's work. And these photographs and references are taken from his book, Flag's Small Houses. The design of Flag's residences, as you can see here, often blur the lines between architecture and landscape. The orientation of a building celebrated the uniqueness of the site. Ernest Flagg, by his own accounts, designed homes for the middle class. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the average number of people per U.S. household in 1900 was 4.76. That's a family of 5. Typically, there were multiple floor levels of living space, and designs usually incorporated cellars and attics. Steep gabled and hip roofs were often combined, as were a variety of dormer styles. Porches were often located on the sides or rear. Outbuildings were designed in the style of the main structure. His unique chimney, a ventilator cap, was used in many designs, often several chimneys on a house. Stone garden or property line walls were an integral part of many designs, and Flagg developed his own stone-faced concrete wall design, which we intend to utilize. Here's some of the architectural elements that have inspired us. You can see from his designs, he builds into the topography, different roof lines, use of dormers, porches on the sides or rear. Here he's put the massing, the lower part of the massing, and a gable towards the street line, and he's put the larger part of the massing behind. And here you see the connection between outbuilding and main structure using the stone wall. Flagg's floor plans create unique, often eccentric building footprints. His own description of his Bocot from his book, Small Houses, includes the home's integration into an old retaining wall. The house accommodates itself to the slope. Flagg's Bocot floor plans provide generous living space, including multiple bedrooms, baths, master suite, and the servants' quarters, also of 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. This excerpt from page 146 of his book describes a single-family 5-bedroom residence, including master suite and servants' quarters. Flagg's home at 209 Flag Place was constructed on the high point of his property. He incorporated a terrace garden and porch that overlooked a sloping lawn and commanded an impressive panoramic view. Bocot and Flag designs in general respond to the site topography. At Bocot, there are 2 stories above the basement, and a lower extension includes a single bay garage. The garage entrance is at street level, and the eave at the lower wing is about 14 feet above grade. So here, about 14 feet above grade. The taller massing has an eave line about 18 feet above grade. That's back here. Stone walls are an extension of the building, integrated in the structure and the landscape. There we go. Again, we're greatly inspired by the work of Flag and in his own words. Design strategies. Here's our proposed home here. In a proposed home adjacent to the individual landmark is part of this developed portion of the block here. The Flag estate is here. The extended designated area is here. And this is the location of the Copper Flag estates back here. So many houses straddle that line in all cases. Our building orientation, you see our site there in relation to Bocot, and here's our location. Single family residence again. We have a garden terrace here, which faces the southeast across the open view. And a section through the site illustrates that we're going to maintain this existing lawn and about a 47-foot distance between the buildings at the closest point. That is from Bocot to our garage, which is mostly below grade and has the garden terrace above it. So our frame envelope, building envelope, is about 60 feet from the envelope of Bocot. Our team worked hard to integrate the building design into the topography, minimize hardscape, embrace natural features. The combined total area of all surfaces other than grass and planted area is 50% of the zoning lot. And this includes a portion of the paved city street, the property lines, and our use of pea gravel and pervious pavers also is included in that 50% as per DCP review requirements. I won't go through in detail. You see we've worked hard at strategies for tree preservation. We're working to preserve 2 trees on the site that are not required to be preserved by city planning, but we find them to be important. One is a chestnut, which is very few left on Toad Hill, and the other is this oak. So we're working with our design team to save those trees. Here's our first floor plan plugged in to the site. As you can see, this is the 47-foot distance between the buildings at the closest point. This is our outdoor green terrace. On the other side, we have 36 feet to the other building. It's not a landmark. Maximum 72 inches high for wrought iron fencing along the property lines, except the front yard, which will be 48 inches, which matches the existing wrought iron fence that exists now. Located in the garage in the lower extension of the home, partially buried below grade, closer to the street level, eliminates the need for extensive cut and fill of the property. And designing for the single bay garage is consistent with the historic home. Just an overview, the existing residence first floor living space is 2252 square feet. That represents 17.8% of that tax lot. And our proposed residence first floor living space is 1798, which represents 17.8% of this tax lot. Total combined first and second floor area of Bocot is 4238, which is 33.4% of their tax lot. And our total combined first and second floor is just under 3,100 square feet, which is 30.8% of our tax lot. This will be the main public view of our building. We took these photographs at a time of year when the trees were bare of leaves to help us see more of the site and the surrounding area. And that is our building plugged into that photograph. As you can see, we've worked to provide massing that's similar to Bocot with our different roof lines, structure, chimney caps, etc. Here's our view from Flag Place across the yard where the pool is on Bocot. Bocot just to the right here. And again, the trees are bare of leaves so that we can actually get a view. These trees are on the Bocot property. So a closer up view. As you can see here, we have our garage at the lower portion, green terrace above, extensive use of stone, natural stone. We bring that wall around. That wall will follow the common lot line between Bocot and the new building. It will connect the house to the outbuilding designed in a similar style. We're using other elements that we've pulled from the design guidelines from Stern's office in the 1980s. Closer look at materials. Field stone, we're going to use a thin cut field stone. It is a natural stone. It's just cut in thinner elements to be easier to install. We can use that also to do our stone walls in the style of Mr. Flagg himself. Permitted stone coursing will follow the design guidelines, again, that we pulled from Stern's guideline book. In the front of the building, we'll use bluestone for our bluestone treads and other detail elements. Wall cap in the back around the pool, we intend to use a porcelain paver, which is a thermal bluestone. It's an outdoor material around the pool area and so on in the back. Again, coursing will be informed by those design guidelines. We'll be intending to use a faux slate material for the roofing, code compliant. We intend to use hardy plank for the siding. Again, the precedent of 20 Iron Mine Drive has asphalt shingles and a synthetic siding material, but we've basically held more to the design guidelines from Stern's office for materiality. Windows will be solid wood windows. They'll be Anderson A series with a divided light. They will have the composite material on the exterior, factory applied color. We'll be using solid insulated doors for garage front door. That is similar to the 20 Iron Mine, which use solid insulated doors. And some of the architectural elements just in a summary: gabled hip roofs, ridge dormer, chimney and curved ventilator cap, pediment window, bracketed door hood, casement windows. You can see that our materials list: the faux slate, quarried fieldstone, stucco, the composite clapboard with a 4-inch reveal advised by the Stern guidelines. The composite material of pergola framing, that'll be a composite material, bluestone caps and treads. The lower wing with single bay garage close to the street level, garden terrace porch above with the perimeter wall, arch gate, continuous garden wall extending from the house, outbuilding designed in similar vocabulary. Regarding the heights, we've kept true to the form of Bocot. Our height of the lower element in the front, flanking the street here, is 13.5 feet above the front yard line, and our taller massing further from the street is about 19 feet to the eave line from the front yard line. Other elevations, so our garden terrace here facing the southeast. And all 4 elevations have been considered. As you see, there's a list of appendices, Stern's design guidelines, designation report, the approved plans from 20 Iron Mine Drive, and our design development drawings to date are all included in the appendices.
All right, thank you. Okay, commissioners, do we have any questions? All right, I don't see any. Oh, do we have a question?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
I wasn't fast enough on my hand raise. Stucco is synthetic stucco or cement stucco?
Cement stucco, good question. Yeah, we won't be using the ephes material.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so I think we'll move to public testimony and we may have more questions after that. So I'm going to turn it over to Sasha Seeley to walk us through the testimony. If you're in the meeting and would like to speak on this item, please raise your virtual hand so she can identify you. And as always, we'll start with anyone who signed up in advance. Sasha?
Okay, so first I'm going to call on Christabel Go from the Society for Architecture. I'm promoting you, Christabel. Okay, Christabel, you should be in the meeting. You can go ahead and unmute your mic. State your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
This is Christabel Goff for the Society for the Architecture of the City. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Flagg's Beaucott originally was a country cottage in the British tradition with stone walls close to the road. It had a garden, which is now a development site. Without criticizing the current application in itself, given the circumstances, we have to ask how it happened that this zoning lot subdivision came to be approved under a CNE in 2008, enabling new construction on what is now lot 93, so close to the landmark, in a once open rural setting. What was the logic? That the setting of an individual landmark is inconsequential, that the demarcation of a subdivision is not a building, that a new building is not inevitable since it would have to be approved by the commission. Good luck with that one. The 1987 designation report makes it clear that the original siting and landscaping were intended to be protected features, and it quotes Flagg, quote, "Back of the wall, the land rises and the house accommodates itself to the slope." The report continues, "Beyond the principal facade, this grassy tree and shrubbery dotted incline continues its relatively steep rise toward the northwest. Viewed from this direction, Beaucott appears to nestle into the slope and into its landscape setting as well. Although Beaucott's rear elevation forms the boundary of a public thoroughfare, the garden setting it faces is an intimate, very private world." Flagg was understandably well pleased with the siting. His description in Small Houses concludes that Beaucott, quote, "has the appearance of belonging to its site, which one often sees in the old buildings of Europe. The building has about it a certain individuality, which seems to belong to the site and to be at home with its surroundings." The report concludes, "This concordance between structure and topography is one of the most significant aspects of Beaucott's design. Regretfully, that aspect of Beaucott's graceful beauty will become forever obscured." Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next I am going to be calling on John Graham. I see your hand raised. I'm promoting you to panelist. John, you can go ahead, unmute your mic and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. I see you're in the meeting, John. You can just go ahead and unmute your mic. Okay, perfect.
Good morning, Commissioners. John Graham for the VSNY. The VSNY supports the construction of a new house on a lot subdivided from land occupied by BOCOT. What we do not support is the architect's decision to raise Flag's seminal work, small houses, their economic design and construction, for details, then jam so many of them together onto these proposed facades that the simplicity Flag achieved effortlessly is totally lost. As you all know, Ernest Flagg designed the Corcoran Art Gallery, the U.S. Naval Academy, and the Singer Building, once the tallest in the world. His work on Todd Hill, however, may have been closest to his core values, for it included not only his own estate, Stone Court, but also the 3 cottages he built, Beaucott, Walcott, and the McCall's Demonstration House, to highlight the construction methods he developed and wrote about in Small Houses. These 3 houses, all individual landmarks, and those featured in Small Houses, share several features: simple massing, large expanses of rubble stone for the exterior walls, and great sweeping roofs over low eaves. They also share a small vocabulary of decorative elements Flagg devised: ridge dormers, pedimented dormers, bracketed porches, multi-light casement windows, stone arches, and retaining walls spreading across his sites. These are used so sparingly that the essential simplicity of a cottage is retained. The proposed house abandons any attempt at anything so plain or dignified or appropriate. A balcony fights with the porch above the main entrance. Twin dormers are jammed below a ridge dormer. An arch built into the pergola competes for attention with the arched chimney cap on the outdoor fireplace and the arched garden gate directly below. And all of these are within 20 feet of each other. Commissioners, around 2008, I wrote permits for many of the Flagg buildings on Todd Hill, including the certificate of appropriateness for the new building at 20 Iron Mine Drive. Please look again at the pictures on board 15 and at the many pictures the applicant has provided of Flagg's 3 historic cottages. A clean, respectful solution is possible, a solution the applicant can surely achieve with the insight of the commission and its staff. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to be calling on Stacy Austin. Stacy, you should be in the meeting now. You can go ahead and unmute your mic and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. Okay, Stacy, you should be all set.
Okay, great. First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to the panel. And I just want to emphasize that the members of my community of the Toad
Excuse
Hill.
me, Stacy, please state your name for the record.
Stacy Austin.
Perfect, thank you.
And again, I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to speak to you today. I just want to say that the members of the Toad Hill community have fought for more than 10 years to preserve our precious Ernest Flagg landmark. What we're really discussing really is that we want to emphasize how important BOCOT is to our community. We're proud of the Flagg estate and the houses. It is really integral to the Toad Hill character. It is part of our historic past, and we just want to see it preserved. Everything about the Flagg estate is integral to our neighborhood. What we don't want to see is something that is just so gigantic built in that spot that pretty much just covers the BOCOT and puts it in the shadows. If the building is permitted, we just don't want it to be this big, tall structure that really overshadows BOCOT, and we just don't want it affecting the adjoining gatehouse, the landmark estate. We are worried about the way the trees are going to come down. There's really no grass. Everything about the estate seems to be obliterated by the size of the structure. It is so important that we keep the character and we really just respect Ernest Flagg. And it's important to Toad Hill. This is a precious part of our community. We just are very, very concerned that it's going to overshadow BOCOT. We worry about the drainage. We worry about all of it. If we can just keep it, in the character and just not let it get out of control, we'd really appreciate that. We just want to preserve Ernest Flag and BOCOT the way it is. We are afraid of the precedent it will send for other builders in our community. And I just want to say that again, Ernest Flag defines us. This is landmark, and we just don't want to see it go away with any more of these gigantic houses. The way we look at this is all those trees, they're saving 2 trees, but there are so many more that are coming down. The gravel, all of it. We just say, please, please save the landmark, save our community. We value it, and it is our entire character. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next I'm going to be calling on Historic District Council. I have promoted you into the meeting. You should be in the meeting now. Kathy, you can go ahead and unmute your mic and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Kathy Brill speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC feels that the proposed building has issues with scale and design as it diminishes the visual impact of the landmark site. The proportions of the new building are too vertical, big, and bulky, which causes it to overshadow the historic cottage next door, when it should instead be taking a backseat to it. The footprint takes up too much space in the lot. This might be remedied if it were more set back and took on a more modest proportion in the context of the site. Additionally, the colors and materials are out of character with the more rustic cottages surrounding. In addition to reducing the size, we suggest the use of darker colors and some type of stone or shingle siding to run through the upper levels of the house. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, my next sign up is Jane McGordy. Sorry if I got your name a little jumbled. You can go ahead and unmute your mic and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak, Jane. I see you're in the meeting, Jane. You can go ahead, unmute your mic. I've asked you. Okay.
Awesome. My name is Jane McGordy. Good morning, Chairperson Carol and commissioners. I'm an architect and preservationist from Brooklyn. I became acquainted with BOCOT and Ernest Flag as part of research I did for an HDC virtual walking tour of Toad Hill in 2020. BOCOT is short for Beau Cottage, the house that Ernest Flag built for his daughter. Thanks to a previous speaker, the description in the LPC designation and in his book is an eloquent statement of his approach to building design and its profound connection to the landscape. This landmark jewel deserves better than the current proposal. The site is both landmarked and within a special natural area district. The presentation does not address slope, drainage, natural flora, items of paramount importance for BOCOT and the adjacent landmark Flag Gatehouse that both sit below the proposed building. The applicant's precedents at Walcott and Copper Flag estates are, to me, poor examples of sensitive landmark design in a landmark district, despite the manual created by Robert A.M. Stern. Except for the stucco, the applicant has substituted slate, stone, and cladding with non-historic materials. The proposed site is overcrowded with paving, sidewalks, a pool, a driveway, accessory parking, areas of pea gravel, and a puzzling outbuilding that is described as an artist's studio or a cabana. Except for the 2 trees that will be preserved, any semblance of a natural landscape will be gone. The use of flag elements seems random. There's one signature flag chimney and the other 2 are not. The volume of the house is cluttered with indentations, porches, terraces, pergolas, in stark contrast to Flag's simpler designs. The roof is too high and too busy, and the attic certainly feels like a future floor in waiting. The elements and material need to be refined and simplified. In summary, the current design is not appropriate and should be revised to reduce the height, bulk, and footprint to become a better neighbor to its surroundings. The entire zoning lot is a landmark property. However, It feels as if the vacant lot is just a blank slate on which to build a large spec house with lots of bells and whistles, and that Bocott and its reduced garden will remain the only landmark part of the site. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes my signups, but I do see I have one more hand raised. So I will bring in Simeon Bankoff. Okay, Simeon, you should be in the meeting. You can go ahead and unmute your mic and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Good morning, Commissioners. Simeon Bankoff speaking on behalf of myself. Christabel actually covered my main question with regards to the procedure of how this ended up being subdivided under a CNE 12 years ago. I wonder at the rules behind that would allow a staff level permit to have that happen. My principal concern, however, is that the Ernest Flagg Estate is a de facto historic district within Staten Island and a borough which is sadly needing many more of those. This particular development, regardless of its study and very good presentation, is one that shows a great deal of incremental change, and not even such incremental change that will alter, that has the potential to greatly alter the overall effect of the estate and Flagg's very careful concept of the topography of the state and how he built the landmark buildings within it. At this point, it's beginning to feel that what we have is a series of small landmark buildings that are beginning to get lost in a sea of additions, whereas Flagg's estate was more of a sylvan pastoral concept. That's all. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're muted, Sasha.
Oops. Those were the signups, and there are no more additional hands raised.
Okay, great. And I'll just note also for the record that Staten Island Community Board 2 recommends approval of the application, just with the advisement of LPC commissioners confirming the materials are appropriate and the removal of a tree will not harm the surrounding environment. And we received one additional letter in opposition from an individual. And as always, all letters received by the commission are shared with our commission, received by the commission are shared with the commissioners. Okay, so I'm going to turn to the applicant to respond, but before I do that, I just want to answer the question about the subdivision. And the commission has historically treated applications to subdivide properties as no work applications. There is no work happening, and therefore it's a certificate of no effect. And that certificate of no effect always explicitly notes that the subdivision doesn't guarantee any additional structures or approval of any additional structures on that subdivided lot. So that speaks to the process. Mr. Berlin, would you like to speak to the comments about the siting, the scale, and the materials?
Yeah, just briefly, and I appreciate all the comments. If we move forward, we absolutely look forward to continuing work with staff on the materials and make sure that the commission is comfortable with that, of course. As for size, I can just relate what we've proposed to what's allowed by zoning. We have an FAR, which is 30%, which is considerably below the permitted 50%. So I hear the comments, and we have considered those issues, and we've proposed something that is below the threshold that is permitted. We didn't use zoning as our guidance for design. The other thing, there was a comment or two about drainage. This site has a sanitary sewer fronting it, which is a big plus. And so drainage will be very accessibly addressed through city sewer in this case. So.
Okay, thank you. We do have, I think, some more questions. Commissioner Goldblum, please go ahead.
Thank you. Has the site plan been approved by city planning?
The borough office, the process is that the borough office basically accepts the site plan as meeting the regulations of the text, and that's where it is now. We are here, landmarks will go back to city planning to move that application forward through the process, but the borough office has accepted the site plan.
Right, and that's our requirement because the city planning process happens after the LPC process. Our requirement is that they present it to the borough office and get the staff sign off on the application to date.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I saw 3 trees on the originals, on the existing plan, and you're saving 2 of them. I think, aren't you required to add trees? You have a certain number of trees per the site, and where are you doing that?
Yeah, good question. Okay, the trees on the site currently by zoning are all allowed to be removed. In other words, they all fall with a critical root zone within the buildable footprint. So we've taken 2 trees that we find very important, and our purpose is to save those. In addition, new plantings are required. We have landscape architect and arborist on board to help us in selection of those. We do have a preliminary plan for that. Yes.
And are they along the side, on the front? I mean, the rendering doesn't show any trees in the front, so I'm assuming they're not in the front.
They're spread throughout the site, and we have some low shrubberies that we'll use closer to the front, and we'll place trees in a location where they have the root zone to grow in the future. So we are working on that, but nothing's been defined.
So you don't have a site plan which shows where new trees will go yet through the staff?
We have in our appendix, we do have a set of plans, the design development plans, which do have a site plan, which should show that. Let's see if I can access that for you. I have control here.
Yeah, I saw on the site plan, there are some circles that look like they might be trees on the side yard facing the flag house, but I just wanted to be clear as to where you're placing trees that you aspire to grow into real trees as opposed to shrubs.
Understood. So yeah, so here's in our design development plan, we've got the shrubberies here, a couple of actual trees that will mature, and back here and along here.
Thank you. So you are showing 3 trees along the front. And those are trees, right? Those big circles in the front, or are those shrubberies?
It's a combination. I have to really define this with the landscape architect to make a final decision on where we put the trees and the tree species as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Shamir Baran.
Thank you. You may have stated this, and I'm sorry if I've missed it, but I would like to know if you've done a survey or if it's defined in Flag Small Houses book of the interior floor to ceiling heights of the majority of the houses. It appears to me as though your design, and it might again be the view of the rendering, is sort of exceeds or it seems to be a bit taller, or the proportion of the ceiling height relative to the overall massing seems a little bit different. So I wonder if you could speak about that, please.
Certainly, yeah. So between 8 and 9 feet would be the general ceiling heights in the houses, both the precedent houses and in the flag book, small houses. We have 8 feet on the second floor. We have 9.5 feet on the first floor ceiling. One way that the house can look to come a little bit lower is to extend those eaves and just have that lower look. But there's no excessively tall ceiling heights in the building. There's nothing over 10 feet or or anything like that.
But the first floor is a little bit taller than most of the flag houses.
Yeah, yes, it's consistent with the built precedent that we showed, but yes, it's about 9.5 feet.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Okay, if there are no final questions, I'm going to start to request to unmute all of you so we can close the hearing and begin our discussion. So Commissioner Shamir Barron, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
I so second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the hearing is closed and we'll now begin our discussion on this application. So the first question is the construction of a house on the site appropriate? And then in terms of the overall height, massing, materials and design, how does that, are those appropriate in this context? Okay, so we'll begin. Commissioner Goldblum, would you like to start this one?
Sure. This is a really, I've been on the commission for a while now, and I've seen at least 3 or 4 projects in this enclave, and it's a real challenge. It's benighted, one might say. It's gone through a lot of trials and errors, perhaps. And this is not an easy job, so I don't envy the applicant the challenge. It is a hard one to do because you have such a strong architect. In a normal application in a situation like this, I would say that the applicant should have a relative leeway in the creation of a design of a new house. But Mr. Flagg has imposed an unusual vision for this area. And it's very clear, it's in writing, it's in design, it's in physical reality, that this was envisioned to be his little slice of Provence or the Cotswolds or whatever flavor of country Europe you could pick. But it was definitely meant to be an enclave of consistent design, vocabulary, and feel. So that limits, I think, more than, let's say, in Douglaston or Fieldston, the architect's choices and the architect's leeway considerably. And that too makes the job harder. So to answer the first question, is it appropriate to put a house here? I think the answer is yes. I think the spacing between the houses is consistent with other spacings envisioned in the complex and in Flagg's written work. I think that the spacing is adequate enough so that you can still view the individual landmark house as an entity and get a sense of its three-dimensionality and its siting. So I think the answer is yes, as a threshold question. Can one put a house here? Yes. I also think that the applicant's done a remarkably good job of trying to digest and integrate the lessons that Flagg is giving him. I think that the presentation has shown that he really is trying very hard to absorb that information and process it in such a way that it helps guide him in his design. And I feel there are many elements to this design that are right and many elements that are not right yet. I think that the use of the flagstone as an extensive material that integrates landscape elements and building elements is correct. I think the use of stucco as a principal facade or material for the upper stories is correct. I think that the integration of details like the chimney caps is also correct. I would, however, question a few other design details and decisions. First, I think that the massing needs to be explored. I think that the house, while the applicant really noted correctly that Flagg intended for his houses to be integrated into the landscape, that was a matter of pressing them down onto the terrain he found, not raising the terrain up and placing them on top with foundations that extended down to the landscape where it was. This house takes the latter approach. This house sits on the crown of the hill and then extends its walls down to meet the topography. That is not, I think that's the source of some of the commentary that we heard from the testimony. The house front volume is lower than the main volume, and that's a good thing. But the floor plate is high up. You see that from the stoop. I think that you got to figure out a way to pull the house into the landscape so that more of it is down closer to the grade. Maybe the volumes step up. I mean, this is not a place where we should be designing this house for the applicant, but I can say that the siting decision to kind of rest the house on the crown and then extend out and down is not the right way to go. And it yields a house that looms over the landmark and looms relative to the way that the cottages were sited, which is to press them into the ground so they grow from the ground up and not from the crown down, number one. Number two, I think that a very important way for us to consider the appropriateness of this house is by looking from the street across the property through to this one, and with the landmark in the foreground and this in the background. There were several views of that. And I think that from that vantage point, which is not this one, but it's like kind of looking from the left, the chimney and pergola are much too prominent. I think that the chimney, the fireplace, the barbecue chimney as a kind of a stela that sticks up as a monument of its own is too close to the landmark. And I think that the pergola should be restudied to make it much simpler and perhaps or remove it altogether and have it to be an open porch. But I think that it's generally the massing of that outdoor structure is much too close to and prominent to the landmark. And I think that on a detail level, something that the Victorian Society said struck me as correct, which is that even though the applicant has picked up on a lot of details from the flag book, if you look at the flag book, the sense one gets as an overall feeling is one of gentleness, naturalness, quiet, balance, and serenity. And I think that this house, because of the proportions of the windows, the detailing of the eaves, the way that the stone belt course relates to the window sills and the railings, all of these details contribute to a sense of agitation and activity that speaks much more to a contemporary McMansion vocabulary than it does to the flag, Cotswolds, Provence vocabulary. So I think that the suggestion of the Victorian Society to kind of study the proportions, details, and to work with staff who can really be of help on this, to just quiet the thing down would be very beneficial. And I think one area that I would strongly suggest that you look at is the eaves. I think that if you look at the flag houses, both drawn and built, the detailing of the eaves is critical to the overall feeling of the house, whether it's the flare or the dimension or the bracket. All of these are key elements that give it that more authentic European flavor that this house sorely lacks. The box soffits, the heavy eaves, I think are just not right. Lastly, I would say that the roofing, the faux slate roof is an acceptable fake material for me, but the fiberglass windows and the synthetic siding and trim are not. Those should be cedar and should be true wood windows, or failing the true wood windows, they could be aluminum clad wood windows, but they should not be fiberglass.
Okay, Thank you for those very detailed comments. Commissioner Bland.
Uh-oh, I'm next. Well, there's not much left to be said after Michael's thorough analysis, which I don't disagree with much of. I have to say also, I was unusually persuaded and enjoyed hearing the testimony from the public. I thought it was very useful as well. So there's no point or even justification in my judgment for more detailed analysis of how to redesign the house. But it does seem as if it's flag on steroids. And I think it just has to be calmed down, reduced in size somehow or other. And maybe the plethora of every detail that Flag was exploring need not be incorporated into one little house or even a big house. So I'll leave it at that, but I think this is not an appropriate design quite yet, although I will note the thoroughness of the architect's study of both Flag and the surrounding context, which I think was enjoyable, but I think be interpreted in a slightly different way.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Goldblum, did you want to add something?
Sorry. You never think that I would be able to say more, but one last thing. We should strongly be looking at the landscape plan. The landscape plan is critical. Screening between this house and the Flag house, screening between this and the street, all super, super important and should be part of the consideration.
Yep. Okay, Commissioner Lutfi.
Yeah, I think that Fred and certainly Michael have said a lot, and I think they've made many good points, which I agree with. And I think one of the very important points that Michael pointed out that makes a lot of sense is this idea of the building, starting a little too high up and needing to come down closer to the ground, which would help the feel of it, the look and feel quite a bit. But while the applicant gave a good presentation and definitely took great care to use the Flag guidelines, I do feel as though this could be simplified quite a bit so that it's a little better integrated into the landscape. And I also do agree that the materials should be not synthetic. They should be more real.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson.
Well, I think it's all been said by Commissioner Goldblum. I could only add, and I wrote here last night, that the volumes need to be simplified, and simplification would help this project a lot. And materials should be restudied, and the datum lines, how the materials are applied to the form, should be studied. And basically, all has been covered.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Shamir Barron.
So I am myself not sure with Commissioner Goldblum's first premise that this is a buildable subdivided lot, mostly because the case, I think, the proposal doesn't make a case for it yet to me. And I think that that's based on all that's been said before, but the most important aspects, I think, have to do with the fact that Stone Court and Walcott both are buildings that, yes, as Michael said, kind of are pushed into the landscape, but they also suggest a kind of a one-story house with a dormered roof, kind of 1.5 or second story, as opposed to this house, which is really, and given the fact that the applicant has cited an example of a description in that kind of paragraph that is cited in the presentation of a true two-story house with bedrooms upstairs and so on. I just don't think that that's the right model here. So when I look at the photograph, what they're calling design photo renderings view from Flag Place 1 at page 42, it's clear to me that the house as depicted in the rendering, it is sort of, if you are seeing it perspectively from the street, wants to be at the kind of the height relative to the two houses on either side. And it is obviously taller. So we want to see it from a distance shorter than, and at perspective distance shorter than the front house, and it reads as taller, which makes it clear that it's a completely different proportioned house, and it is a kind of a full two-story house. So I just think that it needs to be rethought entirely, and then if rethought entirely as a kind of a one-story plus dormered attic, and inserted into this subdivided partial lot, then we'll look at it again and see if a case is made for it. But at this point, it is not, I think.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Chapin. Commissioner Chapin, if you just accept the request to unmute. Yeah.
I agree very much with Michael Goldblum's comments and Fred's comments. And I think the primary thing is this sense of it looming over the landmarks. And I feel the need for more views. We have one view, this one that we're looking at, which really puts any kind of perspective on that. I was thinking maybe an axonometric would help to give a sense of how it relates mass-wise to particularly the other landmarks and other structures nearby it, which Commissioner Shibber-Barron was just referencing as well. I think the primary larger things I agree with about that Michael was talking about is the organic relationship of the sense of growing out of the site, which isn't really seeming to happen here. And part of that is the prominence of the pergolas and the things at the front of the structure that in particular, in addition to the issues about how the building steps up are, I think, important. I think also the attic, creates another piece of the sort of sense of the house looming over the other areas. And I agree that it's very important to look at the way this relates to the landscape. Granted, because of the issue that this is part of a whole complex that Flag created, and it's sort of creating another element of that larger context, which the architect has tried very hard to relate it to. But I agree also with other commissioners that some simplification would help in bringing it closer to something that might have been conceived by the original architect.
Okay, great. Thank you all. Thank you to the applicant for a very detailed presentation, to the public for your comments, and commissioners for your thoughtful comments on this. We will take no action today, and we'll ask the applicant to restudy both the massing and how the building integrates into the landscape, to simplify and restudy the details, to restudy the materials, to introduce more natural materials, and we'll have you back as soon as you're ready. So we'll take no action, and we'll now move to our public meeting agenda. Thank you.
Right, so we will now do public meeting item number 1, LPC 22-00050, application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn Block 261, lots 111, 9, and 110. This is 295 to 297 Hicks Street in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. Currently 3 vacant lots, and the application is to construct 2 new buildings. And commissioners, please note that while there was broad support for the proposed building overall, there were several issues raised about the design of the front facade and elements of the rooftop level. Architect was asked to further differentiate the 2 buildings by studying aspects like the spacing of upper floor windows and placement and infill at the ground floor arch and windows, to increase the slope of the mansard setback and decrease the visibility of rooftop pergolas, and finally to set the rear yard excavation back 5 feet from the rear lot line per the usual LPC standard.
Okay. And so why don't we make a motion to open the proceedings so the applicant can present. Commissioner Vice Chair Bland, would you make a motion to open the proceedings?
So moved.
And Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the applicant may present the revisions.
Hi, this is Brendan Coburn. I'm the applicant. Do we have the slides? Oh, go back. Okay, thank you, commissioners, for taking a look at this a second time. So as Corey was saying, we were asked to look at 6 items, create a greater differentiation between the 2 buildings, make it a little bit, particularly looking at the spacing of the windows on the so-called townhouse unit, and any other things that might be worth considering to create a little bit of visual separation at that area. Move the arch slightly to the left was an idea that was something that was talked about by some, not by all. Create a simpler symmetrical infill within that arch to sort of reduce the asymmetry that existed within the arch itself. Minimize the view of the trellis and solar panels from the street. Increase the slope of the mansard roof, and then leave the 5-foot excavated area at the rear lot. So if we could move to the next slide, please. Okay, so this, no. All right, this is the previous proposal on the left and the revised proposal on the right. The numbering system is slightly messed up, but I'll explain that shortly. So you will see the first thing we did was we adjusted the windows on the townhouse unit so that the spacing between them was more even in the upper 2 floors. This increased the amount of masonry wall on either side of this townhouse so that the entire sort of townhouse portion of the building came in a little bit more. We also then lined up the windows on the first floor with those upper windows, and then got the relationship of the entry door of the townhouse a little bit closer also to the spacing of the windows up above. Then the next thing we did on that facade was we brought in a bluestone plinth from the windowsill of the first floor down. This was sort of to further differentiate this building from the building on the left while maintaining the full composition. The arch we did not move to the left because it was where it was precisely because it needed to be in order for the garage function to happen. So that was something we were not able to accomplish. What we did adjust the panel to the left of the garage door so that it read as being part of the garage door, thereby simplifying and making symmetrical the garage door opening. We added a sort of transom or a muntin condition to the main floor. This was a thing that was spoken about but not requested, but it was something that we had been looking at. We added a transom to the second floor and to the first floor on the townhouse building to sort of reduce the scale of the windows a little bit. We pushed the mansard roof back from 5 degrees to 10 degrees. And on that particular request, we went and checked some of our old drawings on actual mansard roofs we had worked on in other projects and discovered that they average 7.5 to 10 degrees. So we went with the the steeper pitch to get the stronger shadow line. We rotated the trellis around 90 degrees and pushed it back on the roof so to reduce its visibility. And then we, at the back of the house, we did add that excavation. We removed the excavation of the full lot and maintained the 5-foot depth for the full depth of the building. You'll note that there is a small planter that has been introduced next to the garage door. And that was at the request. That was a request to satisfy the requirement from DOB for having a planted area on this part of the lot. If we could go to the next slide, and we can. Oh, I'm sorry. One last thing I wanted to. You'll see there's an arrow pointing number 2 to a block of bluestone that has been placed at the bottom of our control joint in the brick facade. And that was another thing we did because we were interested in sort of marking that separation between the two buildings and how it came to the ground. We also realized that that particular control joint, which would have facade water in it on a regular basis and was coming down, that water would collect there and you would get this moment of efflorescence in the facade. And rather than let that just occur, we decided we would actually put a point on it and celebrate that moment. We thought it was, it's a little design move, if you will. If we could now move to the next slide. So these are the previous on the left and the revised on the right. And so you can see the addition of the transom units and the further articulation of the windows themselves, the introduced bluestone, and then the changed spacing on the windows. You can also see in this rendering on the right that the garage door detail has been extended over to the left to create a more symmetrical condition there. Next, please. This is the comparison of the head-on facades. The other difference in here is the previous rendering, the depth of the sort of recessed Flemish bond had been incorrectly rendered as full depth, and it's really only 2 inches deep, and that's been corrected in this rendering. And you can see that the trellis has dropped out of view. We pulled back the trellis on the right side as well as rotating the trellis on the left side. Next view, please. And this is the view from standing on the north, looking back to the south. You can see this was primarily showing that the trellis having stepped back and the increased angle of the recessed stepped back mansard roof. Next slide, please. Just a quick comparison of the front yard detailing of the townhouse piece, and then the changes to the trellis are visible in this axonometric study. Next slide, please. The previous proposal inserted into the context of the full block, and the revised proposal is up top. And the next slide. And then let's see, this is the previous building section. And if we could look at the next slide, please. So the revised section is comparing the previous 5-degree angle in the upper part of the drawing with the revised 10-degree angle on that roof. And then we're also showing at the rear of the lot the 5-foot full depth planting zone. That may be the last slide, in which case I would request going back to drawing 4, perhaps. And that's it, I believe, unless I've forgotten something. Sarah, you're muted.
Thank you, Brendan. Commission, do we have any questions, commissioners? All right, I just want to note for the record that we did receive a letter from the Brooklyn Historic Association in response to the revised proposal, expressing gratitude for the changes, but still having concerns about the arch and the window design. Okay, so if we don't have any questions, I think we'll move to our discussion. So look for my request to unmute. And as has been presented, the last time we saw this, there was largely support for this project, the overall height and massing and the general composition. But we asked the applicants to look at the detailing to express the individuality of the houses and the expression of two houses. And there were many suggestions in how to do that. And the architect has presented some changes today. We asked him to slope the mansard roof more, to reduce the visibility of the rooftop pergola in particular by rotating it, and the other rooftop elements, and to restudy the details of the windows and doors, and at the back, of course, to set back the excavation back 5 feet from the rear property line. So the applicant has made some changes in response to each of those 5 areas, and let's have our discussion. Commissioner Shamir Baran, would you like to start? I think you were.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. So I was very much in support of the presentation, the proposal as it was presented last time, and in fact thought that especially the kind of the position of the arched entry, as well as its kind of trespass of that line between what would otherwise be 2 separate buildings, was actually really interesting and heightened the experience of that particular moment, despite the fact that it kind of overlapped there. So I thought it was really successful, and did not think it needed too much modification at all. Although I have to say, I really appreciate what they've done on the roof, the slope of the mansard, the repositioning, the reorientation of the rooftop element, I think is a really good thing. The kind of the squeezing closer towards the kind of whatever center line, or giving more dimension to the brick on either side of the windows, of the furthest right and left of the windows, I think is very successful. Also, the line in the window, the transom, I think is perfectly nice and good. I do not think the bluestone kind of sort of bulkhead or entry piece to the element on the right is really necessary, nor do I think that kind of the moment that underscores the efflorescent, the water situation potentially at that water line is I mean, they both seem a little bit finicky to me and not necessary, but I also understand how they help to define better the kind of the difference between the 2 sides, and so would be in support of it, but really thought it was very successful previously. So I'm in support of this project, and appreciate the changes that have been made in response to the critique.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, I think that the changes that the applicant made have helped to, increase the differentiation between the buildings, which are good, and the changes to the mansard are good. The transoms, I think, are helpful, and some of the changes to the garage door. I guess I kind of agree with Commissioner Rashima Baran that, just the bluestone across there is not, I would have been okay with it as it was originally. I think it's moved a little bit, to make the differentiation more clear, the edge of it, which is fine. But I would have maybe just left it as it was, but I could approve this also as presented. Let's see what other commissioners think about that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Goldblum.
Thank you. I agree with Adi that it was good before and it's better now. I also agree heartily with Adi that the bluestone base on the right is unnecessary. And I mean, it's not like I would vote against it because of it, but I would suggest that the applicant work with staff to get rid of it. I think that the block detail is actually quite successful because you would have a horrible set of stains going down that reveal, and this kind of celebrates it in a very Richardsonian way that's appropriate to this particular design. I think that the sloped mansard is much more successful. I think that the simple addition of the transom bar gives this piano nobile a sense of scale that was lacking, and I think therefore it is a good thing. And the only thing I would suggest to the applicant is that they look at the brick a little bit carefully with the staff. I mean, there's so many interesting ways you could take the brick on a house like this, and I think about the Richardsonian use of brick, and you know, whether it's a honey iron spot or a darker one, or I don't know, but I think that the brick need not match its neighbor. It doesn't look like that's the intention, but I think they should look with the staff at a brick that contrasts with but harmonizes with the block.
Okay. Commissioner Bland?
Agreeing that it was good before, and I get a little bit better now, although I think most of the changes were pretty minimal. And thank goodness, in a way, they were minimal, particularly resisting any attitudes of changing the big hemicycle garage entry, which I think is not consistent with its neighbors, but that's perfectly fine with me, as you have deduced over years. I'm not a fan of mimicking the context, but maybe being inspired by it. And I think I'm glad that this big element of the large part of the larger townhouse is retained. I don't need to comment on the rest of it, except that the pergola's disappearance from view is a good thing, very good thing. And the gratuitous aspect of that bluestone is very peculiar, I think, and should definitely be eliminated. If anything, maybe a brownstone, but not a bluestone. But I would just go back to the brick. There's nothing wrong with that, in my judgment. Anyway, I can go along with whatever the rest will approve in terms of getting to an approval today.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Lutfi?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with everybody on this. Sometimes it's the small moves that make an already interesting project even better. We find that all the time. I think these, subtle changes have really strengthened it. Everything from the lining up of the windows on the townhouse side to putting the transoms on, the larger windows. I happen to agree that the bluestone on the facade, I appreciate the attempt to differentiate the two buildings a little more, but there's something almost a little jarring about that bluestone. So if there's going to be something there, and I can go either way on this, maybe Fred's idea about the brownstone is a good idea. Pushing the roof back is, really helped, as did reducing the visibility of the pergola. I personally like the change in tone of the bricks. I feel like it helps the project sort of fit better within the context, because but it doesn't blend it in a way that it's undifferentiated, because it's a different design.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jefferson?
Yes, I'll start with the bluestone. I don't think it's necessary. I think the metalwork is enough to differentiate A from B. And I think the sloping of the mansard roof works really well. I think this is acceptable and good.
Okay, Commissioner Gustafson?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with the previous commissioners. I have nothing to add.
Okay, so I think we are all in agreement that with these changes, the design is appropriate to the district, but that we would recommend that the bluestone at the base of the right side be eliminated, and either eliminated and return to the previous design or restudied with the staff to consider brownstone. Commissioner Shamir Barron, would you be able to make that motion? Would you be comfortable making that motion?
Yes.
Great.
Okay. In the matter of docket number LPC 220050595597 Hicks Street, Brooklyn Heights Historic District. This is 3 vacant lots in the applications to construct 2 new buildings. I note that the existing vacant lots contain no features or improvements for which the Brooklyn Heights Historic District was designated. And I further note that the streetscape is composed of a range of building heights from 2 to 5 stories and a range of building types with traditional facade organization and architectural features. And I recommend approval, finding that the construction of the 2 new buildings on this vacant lot will restore the continuity of the street wall, thereby strengthening the streetscape, that the existing streetscape displays a variety of building types and scales, including flat buildings, carriage houses, single-family row houses, and firehouse, and that the height and massing of the proposed buildings will be in keeping with the scale of the neighboring buildings on this street. That the composition of the facades is based both on the typical 19th century row house form and an areaway, ground floor entrances, regular punched window openings, and a crowning cornice, and with a large arched opening at the south building evocative of carriage houses, which is consistent with the organization of buildings throughout the streetscape and district, and that the contemporary design approach provides a harmonious juxtaposition with the historic buildings in the streetscape. That the detailing of the proposed facades featuring patterned brickwork, bluestone detailing and windows with transom bars at the first floor and second floors reflects the varying details found within historic districts and will provide a level of depth and articulation that's found on buildings within the historic district. The material palettes of the stone finishes, red brick, painted metal will be harmonious with the adjacent buildings and will help the buildings blend into the surrounding streetscape. That the depth of the proposed buildings and their projection into the central green space will be consistent with other buildings within the block. That the rear facades will be simple in design, residential in character, and well scaled to their context. That the material and slope of the penthouse recall a slate mansard roof, a typical feature of buildings in the historic district. That the excavation of the rear yard will be done in compliance with Department of Building regulations under the supervision of a licensed professional engineer to protect adjacent buildings. That the rear excavation will be pulled back 5 feet from the lot line to allow for substantial plantings. That the trellises with solar panels are set back from the front facade, will be minimally visible from public thoroughfares, and will not detract from the building or the streetscape. The proposed curb cut will be typical in terms of size and placement and will be a discrete presence within the streetscape, and that the proposed buildings will enhance the special architectural and historic character of the historic district, and the applicant will work with staff to refine the details at the ground level, which are currently described as bluestone.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, and Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
With 8 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
That's approved. Thank you. And we'll now resume our public hearing agenda.
And we will pick up with public hearing item number 3, LPC 22-01337, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 237, Lot 17, 155 Henry Street in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. This is an apartment house designed by Charles Meyer and built in 1921. The application is to alter the entrance.
Okay, commissioners, the applicants have entered the hearing. If you could just click on your screen, you will have control of the presentation and you can advance the slides using your arrow keys. And you may state your name for the record and you may begin.
Good morning, commissioners. My name is Nate Shelkoff. I represent the Brownstone Door Company, and our company specializes in the fabrication of historically significant entryways in New York City. You can look at our website, brownstonedoors.nyc, and see what kind of projects we take on. As part of our design work, we conduct extensive historical and on-site research. We consult New York City tax photos, 19th century door catalogs, books, and relevant newspaper archives. We have quite a library. Our project is located at 155 Henry Street, and it's an apartment building that was built in 1928. It was designed by Mortimer Freehoff. Is our slide coming in? So it was designed by Mortimer Freehoff, and he was also an architect for a number of apartment buildings in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. Our firm has been contracted by the co-op to replace the existing wood double-leafed entry doors and transom. The existing awning and frame are to remain. The board has also requested that we remove the transom spindles to streamline the entrance and make it a little more harmonious with the similar apartment buildings in the Brooklyn Heights neighborhood. We've submitted our proposal to LPC for the reconfiguration of the transom and the entry door divided lights with the removal of the transom spindles. The goal is to increase the functionality of the entryway, to introduce a little more light into the interior, and to streamline the entrance overall while still respecting the character of the building. As I mentioned, the co-op would like us to remove the transom spindles, which in our opinion is a very highly irregular element that you don't typically see in entryways. So we'd like to begin with a few historical references that we have. Here we see the 1940s tax photos and also the 1967 photograph from the LPC archives. On our next slide, we can see the entrance in its current condition with the spindle transom, the transom sash, door frame, and masonry surround, which is Art Deco in style. The next couple of slides show our proposal. So on this slide, we see some detailed drawings of the entryway, which shows the spindles that we'd like to remove, and the doors, which are going to be replaced with a modified light configuration. On our next slide, we see the proposed entry door elevation and section details with the reconfigured lights. Our proposal is to replace the transom sash by reducing the number of divided lights in both the door and the transom, and to remove the spindles that are currently in the transom. As you see on the next slide, the doors and transom are to be fabricated and constructed of white oak stiles and rails with tempered insulated glass units. This will make a more energy efficient entryway, much more energy efficient than the current door. It's going to have a stain finish. They'll be very similar in color to the existing door. On the next slide, we see a few of the details. It's very similar, the profiles of the molding. We've added a slight bead to get a bolection molding, give it a little more depth, which is very typical on historic doors. We'd like to show you a comparison to some other buildings in Brooklyn Heights. So in this slide, you can see the current entryway at 155 Henry Street. Now, during our initial site visit in March of this year, we immediately noticed the stylistic differences between the modern Art Deco surround and the busyness of this entryway with its transom spindles and traditional divided lights. We believe that the current configuration with numerous divided lights and transom spindles detracts from the clean lines of the masonry surround, and that the proposed entryway would be a better complement. Also, for comparison, we have some photos of other neighborhood entryways, illustrating how transoms are divided, all without spindles. We actually couldn't find a single transom that has spindles in the neighborhood. So in this slide, you can see the entryways at 2430 Clinton Street, which was built in 1926, and 35 Pierpont Street, which was built in 1929, both in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District, and both designed by Mortimer E. Freehoff, the architect of 155 Henry Street. Both of these entryways have single light transoms with no spindles. On the next slide, you can see some examples of divided light transoms without spindles as well. Here we're showing 55 Pineapple Street, 65 Montague Street, and 75 Montague Street. These three entryways showcase a variety of styles in their divided light transoms. Our proposal is to create a transom very similar in style to the one shown here at 75 Montague Street. No other buildings in the neighborhood have transom spindles. We'd like to show you a few slides to show the historical context. In this slide, we see the rendering of 155 Henry Street as shown in the Daily Eagle from October 23rd, 1927. It also shows the 3 row houses that were demolished to make room for this construction. The next slide, LPC 12, captures the rest of the Daily Eagle article. The article notes that the construction of 155 Henry Street in 1928 was noteworthy not because of its architectural significance, but rather its amenities. And the last slide is referencing Clay Lancaster's authoritative book on the history of Brooklyn Heights. In this book, Lancaster documented all the buildings of historical significance. He intentionally omits 155 Henry Street and its analogs within the survey, accusing the developers of destroying the genuinely historical character of the neighborhood by demolishing row houses and erecting large modern apartment buildings in their place. So Clay's book was originally published in 1961, only 30 years after the construction of 155 Henry Street. At that point, the building was still relatively new addition in the neighborhood. So in conclusion, the existing configuration appears anachronistic with the Art Deco elements of the masonry surround. Our proposed design for the configuration of the transom and entry door divided lights is in character with the style of the Art Deco surround, given the wide variety of entryway configurations found in the Brooklyn Heights district. We believe that this would be the most appropriate in style. Lastly, the transom spindles, while it's a unique element, it doesn't signify any historical or architectural relevance and doesn't contribute to the architectural character of the building or the neighborhood. Also, the spindles, as I mentioned previously, are not found in any other entryway in Brooklyn Heights. From my own experience, having studied and built many entryways in the last 20 years, I can say with confidence that these important features are usually copied and replicated extensively, and that's not the case with these transom spindles. This feature is very irregular. So the reconfiguration of the divided lights and removal of spindles will enhance and streamline the appearance of the entryway, making it more cohesive with the Art Deco surround. That's it.
Thank you very much. All right, we have a couple of questions. Commissioner Bland?
You may have said this, but I don't think you did. Are those doors original to the building?
No, those doors are about 20 years old, and they were placed about 20 years before that. We got that from the superintendent of the building.
And you don't have much more than you showed, fuzzy early pictures, I think, at best, of the original doors?
That's the best we could do.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Chapin.
Is there any evidence of whether the spindles were original, or I'm trying to see on the 1940s, it looks like there's something vertical there, maybe not spindles. Whether these are original, or if not, what originally was there? Is there any anything that either the staff or the architect has on that?
The staff doesn't have any additional information on that. What we can see in the photos is extremely limited. So all we have is the stated record of replacements over time.
Okay, other questions? Okay, I don't see any other questions at this time, so we'll move to public testimony. And I'll turn it over to Sasha Seeley. If you're in the meeting and would like to testify on this item, please raise your virtual hand so she can identify you. And I'll turn it over now. Sasha?
Okay, thank you. I'm going to start with the Brooklyn Historic Association, Judy Stanton. Judy, you should be in the meeting now. You can go ahead and unmute your mic and state your name for the record, please. You have 3 minutes to speak. Make sure you're here. Hold on, let me try promoting you again. Okay, Judy, I see that you're in the meeting. You can go ahead. Mute your mic. Thank you. Just state your name for the record, please.
Stanton, speaking for the Brooklyn Heights Association. We do not object to removing the wooden spindles, but we think the new doors and transom sash could be improved to harmonize better with the original entrance design. We appreciate that the applicant has pulled together about as much documentary evidence as probably exists. We do wish that they had ordered the high-resolution version of the 1940 photo for the neighboring property instead of using the online low-resolution version. Unfortunately, our low-res version happens to obscure the very spot where the entryway appears. But in the absence of definitive evidence as to whether the wooden spindles are original fabric, we think it is fine to remove them. Even if you squint at the 1940 photo and think the spindles were on the building by then, they do not strike us as stylistically similar to other elements of this late 1920s entryway, and in particular, the masonry surround. If supposed to be original, they would be redundant with the transom sash muntins. Seeing as how the spindles are placed in front of the transom, they seem more like a later addition to protect the glass rather than intentionally designed. Sorry about the clock. However, we do not see a reason to change the transom sash from 5 muntins to 3. The 5 muntin pattern is probably original, even if the exterior wood spindles are not. On the new doors, the horizontal effect of their muntins seems at odds with verticality of the masonry surround and the tall transom. We suggest either adding a vertical mullion to each door or removing the muntins. The single pane approach for each door would be similar to what currently exists at 35 Pierpont Street, an apartment building that was designed by the same architect just a few months after this one. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Brooklyn Heights Association. Let me swap out. Okay, next I'm going to be calling on Historic District Council, Kathy Brill. Kathy, you can go ahead. You are in the meeting. You can just unmute your mic and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
This is Kathy Brill speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC finds that the proposed alteration is inappropriate as the configuration does not have a sense of historic character in comparison to the elements being removed. The proposed new transom is much larger than the existing and will not match the original rectangular design. Also, the removal of the wooden post causes loss in detail and design. We recommend that the design keep the divisions and spindles as they are and just replace the glass. Additionally, the canopy does not have a relationship to the shape of the doorway. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have John Graham, the Victorian Society, New York. John, you should be in the meeting now. You can go ahead and unmute your mic and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Graham for the VSNY. The Victorian Society opposes this proposal to remove what appears to be original entrance infill and replace it with new infill, which doesn't match in configuration or detail. We note especially the proposed loss of the transom spindles and the change in configuration of the door lights to a horizontal format, which seems wrong for this building. A close inspection of the tax photo indicates that the existing design is original. Finally, the applicant seems to believe that if an element is unique, such as the spindles, it should be removed. We believe that unique elements should be celebrated. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Let me see. Those were all my signups. Let me see if I see any more hands raised. Okay, there are no more hands raised, so concludes the signup.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just note for the record that we received a resolution from Brooklyn Community Board 2 recommending approval of the application. So I'd like to turn to the applicant and ask if you'd like to respond to the comments we've heard. Oops. Where did he go? Mr. Shelkoff, would you like to respond to anything we've heard? just unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I'd like to respond to the Historical District Council regarding the shape of the canopy. The canopy is existing and it's not part of our application. And the transom is going to remain exactly the way it is in size. We're not changing that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any final questions? Okay, I don't see any final questions, so we'll begin our discussion. I'm asking to unmute all of you so that we can make a motion to close the hearing. And so please accept that. And Commissioner Gustafson, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so we'll begin our discussion. This is an application to replace a door and a wood grill in front of it. And this is a door that by record of replacements is approximately 20 years old or thereabouts. But it's, I think, unclear, the documentation on the wood grill. And the proposal is to install the door as is shown on the slide right now. And I think it's interesting, we had another application this morning also to replace what we knew to be actually a historic door. And many commissioners found that to be appropriate because the proposed door was in keeping with many of the other examples on similar buildings of similar age and style. So I think we'll have a similar discussion here. Commissioner Chapin, would you like to start this one?
Yeah, I certainly have a very mixed mind about this. The fact that it's such an unusual feature, I actually find rather appealing. Of course, we don't have any evidence. I'm talking about the spindles. We don't have any evidence that it was in fact original, except for the photo, which isn't very clear, and that suggests there might have been a vertical element that was not exactly, it was not the spindles. I don't know. I think that having a verticals on the transom is appropriate. And I kind of regret the loss of the spindles. We'll see what other commissioners think about that, I guess. I think that the configuration of the door panels is not what you would expect to see, and that should go back to something closer to what would have been historic, or just be a single glass panel would also be appropriate on this highly decorative Art Deco building, because it would not detract from the building. So I could see a couple of alternatives, but I think that the current door fenestration is not what I think would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Goldblum?
I agree with what Diana said. I think that they should restudy it. In terms of the spindles and the transom, I do think that the transom is not unattractive as it is, but my guess is that it's one of those things that's probably beloved. I would love to hear what Fred says on this, but it might be one of those quirky, weird things that, even though it's maybe stylistically wrong, would be worthwhile considering keeping. But I'm not. I would defer to those who know better than me.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chen?
I'm going to defer to the commission this time because I joined in late. I just finished the other Zoom meeting. Thank you.
Okay, great. Commissioner Bland?
Well, I want to thank the applicant for a roll through my community, a community I've lived in and know all these doors, which you showed us so well for 50 years. But still, it got me to focus on some of the details, which I haven't done. Just as way of personal anecdote, every time I walk out my front door, I stare directly at the center line of 35 Pierpont Street, across the street from me. Right behind my house is the Heights Casino, which was also prominently mentioned as 75 Montague Street, where I was actually president for 3 years of the Heights Casino back in the 80s. So I know these places extremely well. And I know this building well as well. And I've always been mystified by the strange, I think, discordant door and spindle assembly therein. I cannot believe that it's original, but you never know. But it certainly does seem to be discordant to me, as just my design eye says this is discordant, what's there. But also, I think what's being proposed is discordant. Maybe let's call it 2-deco. That horizontal arrangement is perfectly suited for a much more streamlined 20s, 30s kind of building than this is. This is late deco at best and kind of merging with neoclassicism of apartment buildings. So what I think is appropriate is what they've shown at 35 Pierpont Street, that very building and very doorway that I look at many times a day as I walk out. It's all clear, just one sheet of glass and one sheet of glass on the transom. And I think just keep it simple, straightforward. I'm perfectly happy, in fact, thrilled to get rid of the spindles. I think they're an oddity that frankly is at odds with the building itself. So I think you have a great model. Just go back and keep it simple is what I would say.
Thank you. Commissioner Lutfi.
Yeah, I would agree with Fred. We don't have historic photos, and it doesn't seem like these spindles in any way have any connection to the building and its architecture. If you look at 35, I agree with your recommendation, Fred, and you look at the facade of the building, there's a lot going on here, as there is at 155. So these, I think 155 can handle just having glass panels in the door and having glass above. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay. Commissioner Jefferson.
In most cases like this, I go for replication. And I'm looking at this spindle. It's been there for 53 years. I mean, that's a long time. And we don't even know if it was there before. And it's quaint, strange. So I'm ambivalent about this because I'm for replication, and yet here it doesn't fit, but it's unique, and unique has some value. In terms of the door, I would rather replicate what was there. And here I'm ambivalent too. If they want to go with a straight piece of glass, is fine too. So I'm ambivalent about this, but I lean towards replication.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gustafson.
Yeah, I agree 100% with Commissioner Bland.
Okay. Commissioner Shamir Baran.
I also agree with Commissioner Bland.
Okay. So I think we can actually make a motion to approve with modifications for the removal of the existing door and spindles, and for the installation of a new wood door. However, the configuration should be restudied in consultation with the staff to be closer to the style and using 35 Pierpont as a model. Commissioner Chapin, would you be comfortable making that motion?
Yeah, I think so. Let me
Okay.
give it assist if necessary. In the matter of a certificate of appropriateness, Borough of Brooklyn, LPC 2201-337, 155 Henry Street, Brooklyn Heights Historic District, and an apartment house designed by Charles Meyer and built in 1921. The application is to alter the entrance. I note that the building's style, scale of materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the doors, transom, and grille have previously been replaced. Therefore, the proposed work will not remove any historic original historic fabric, that the design of the building's facade featuring a pattern of alternating stone and brickwork, decorative brickwork, and a carved stone entrance enframement can support a simplified transom design, and that the proposed reduction in the number of lights at the transom from
Well, I think that a simplified configuration would be in keeping with the configuration found at other buildings of this type, style, and age.
Thank you.
However,
the proposed configuration, the doors featuring 4 lines with horizontal muntins, does not relate well to the style of building and is atypical of apartment buildings in this historic district. Therefore, I recommend that the doors feature a single light configuration similar to that at 35 Pierpont, and that the transom also be simplified to a single light.
Yeah, in consultation with the staff.
In consultation with the staff.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
All right, Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
With 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
Okay, so that's approved with those recommendations. Please continue to work with the staff, and we'll move to the next item.
Next item is public hearing item number 4, LPC 21-10859, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, block 1965, lot 76, 141 Gates Avenue in the Clinton Hill Historic District. This is an Italianate style row house built in 1864, and the application is to modify masonry openings at the rear extension.
Hey, Commissioners, the applicants have entered the hearing. You now have control of the presentation. You just need to click on your screen, and then you can advance the slides using your arrow keys. Be sure to unmute yourself. State your name for the record, and you may begin. Michael, you need to unmute yourself. Michael, we can't hear you because you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank
All
you.
right, sorry about that.
Please remember to state your name for the record.
Okay. My name is Michael House, presenting on behalf of Michael House Architect. I will try to get through the presentation as quickly as I can. So this project is the renovation of a single family house at 141 Gates Ave in Brooklyn. Oops, 1 second. As you can see, the property is located in the Clinton Hill Historic District. We have here the 1940s tax photo and the current facade photo for context. And the primary information I would like to go over with the commission here is related to enlarged masonry openings and a new deck on the rear facade. So you can see here, this is the block diagram showing the neighborhood fabric. This is our project here, 141 Gates Ave. As you can see, there's a view corridor from Grand Ave, which is the reason that, which means that our rear facade is visible from the thoroughfare. And there, I wanted to bring your attention to a recently reviewed similar project, an approved project at 122 Gates, which is on the next block over with a very similar condition with an open view corridor from Cambridge Place. Here you can see the massing of the block. The green indicates existing 2-story rear additions. The yellow indicates our proposed rear deck and another existing rear deck a few houses over. This is the existing rear elevation. You can see the existing 1/1 punched openings and single door at the basement level. This is the proposed rear elevation. So we have new enlarged masonry openings, equidistant masonry piers at each side of the opening, as well as an intermediate pier at this location. This is a steel window system. So essentially a black steel window system. The proposed railing is a black steel picket rail with a open web deck, black painted steel deck, and open web steel risers leading to the basement level. Here you can see existing plan at the rear facade, punched openings, and proposed plan at the rear facade, 8-foot projecting deck, window wall system, and the stairs leading down. Here we have the existing and proposed section. Here is, I'm showing the window detailing. So just sort of typical divided light steel Muntin style detailing, picket rail system, enlarged openings, etc. This is the neighboring precedent project at 122 Gates that was recently approved. So you can see the massing of this addition and the window system, picket rail, etc., from the view corridor. This is our project, 141 Gates, the existing view from Grand Ave. Here's the proposed view from Grand Ave. You can see the outline of the window system and deck here. And finally, this is the existing view from the rear yard and the proposed view from the rear yard.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? All right, I don't see any questions. I'm going to turn it over to Sasha Seeley to see if we have any members of the public who would like to speak on this item. If you're in the meeting and do wish to speak on the item, please raise your hand so she can identify you.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any signups for this item, so I'm just going to take a look in the attendees and see if anyone raised their hand. I don't see any hands raised, so that concludes the signups.
Okay, great. And we have a resolution from Brooklyn Community Board 2 recommending approval of the application. All right, so commissioners, any final questions? All right, I'm going to go ahead and start to request to unmute each of you so that we can close the hearing and begin our discussion. All right, Commissioner Shamir Barron, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. And Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. And so this is an application to just modify some window openings at a rear extension that already exists, and it's obliquely visible through the side yard in a way that many additions are in this district. And the applicant showed us a recent approval by this commission for a new extension with a similar fenestration pattern. So let's begin our discussion. Commissioner Jefferson, would you like to start this one?
Yes, yes. This project consists of modifying masonry opening for windows. The project is consistent with its neighbors and it adding a metal landing and stairs. And I think it's approvable.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Shamir Barron. Oh, sorry, I think I missed Commissioner Gustafson.
That's okay. It hardly gets more modest than this. There's no additional bulk, no additional footprint. The change in the fenestration is modest. And of course, the applicant wisely used 122 as a comparison. So we would be hard pressed to find this inappropriate. So this is fine.
Okay, Commissioner Shamir Barron.
Yes, I agree. It's appropriate.
Okay, and Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, although it's visible, I think the design makes it very appropriate and not a problem at all.
Okay, Commissioner Goldblum?
I agree. It's appropriate.
Commissioner Chen?
I agree as well, especially from Commissioner Gustafson.
Okay, and Commissioner Bland?
I would say, thank goodness this is visible. It's very, very elegant and simple and straightforward. I hope it's not just the beautiful rendering itself, but the actual fact. But I think this is a outstanding example of how to modestly change the rear view of a brownstone to make it kind of more consistent with living today.
Okay, and Commissioner Lutfi?
I agree. It's very good looking and appropriate.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so I think we all are in agreement that this is appropriate. Commissioner Jefferson, would you be able to make the motion?
Sure. In the matter of LPC-21 10859-141 Gates Avenue, Clinton Hill Historic District, an Italianate style row house built in 1864. Application is to modify masonry openings at the rear extension. I note that the building's style, scale, material, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Clinton Hill Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not eliminate any damage, any significant architectural features, or damage any significant architectural features, that the modified opening will retain the scale and proportion of punch window openings and will be harmonious with other window openings at this facade and at adjacent buildings, that the proposed vertical and horizontal division of the windows and doors will break down the scale that the work would only be visible from limited portions of the public thoroughfare and from an oblique angle and be seen in conjunction with existing tall fences and therefore will not significantly lessen the relationship of the rear facade with others in the row, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural and historical character of the buildings or historic district.
Sarah, will you
Thank you. Commissioner Shamir Barron, would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. And Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Shamir Barron,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Gustafson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
With 9 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
Okay, so that's approved. Thank you very much. We're going to break for lunch now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are behind schedule, so we will break for lunch. We'll come back promptly at 1 o'clock, and we will resume with the next item on the agenda, and hopefully we'll make up some time this afternoon. So we'll ask all members of the public to leave the meeting now, and commissioners, just turn your audio and video off. Thank you.